I'm Jeff Koneck, and I'm here to tell you today about a hero of 1888. Her name was Minnie Freeman. Minnie Freeman was only 19 years old. She was a school teacher in a one-room sod house near Ord, Nebraska. She had about 13 to 15 children in her classroom, and the children loved her because they loved the way she spoke, they loved the way she taught, and you know, the children were ages 5 almost to like 16 or so. So there was a wide range in this one-room sod schoolhouse. On January 12th, 1888, it was actually kind of a warm day. The kids had just light jackets. I'm sure their parents were appalled that they didn't want to wear their heavy coats, but that's, you know, what the day was, 40, 45 degrees. They got their lunches in their little pails, and they were on their way to school, and they had a whole morning of classes, and Minnie Freeman said, you know, it's such a nice day, let's go outside and enjoy it for a little bit. They took their lunches outside. They probably played Duck, Duck, Goose or Snap the Whip. And then the weather started changing. So she called all the kids back in. Come on back in, let's go. They all went back into the classroom, and it was getting colder and colder and colder. The wind started whipping. She put a couple of more logs inside of the little wood-burning stove. They had coal or logs both at that time, and it did not get warmer. The children pulled their coats and wraps around them further, and she was beginning to get worried, at which point the wind really came through like a gale force and tore the door off of its leather hinges. When the door came off, she knew something was not going to be right. Two of the older boys helped nail the door back on the hinges. It blew off again, and this time they just nailed the door shut. Now remember, this was a sod house, and so it had a wood roof on it with some shingles, but they started hearing things coming in through the cracks of the windows. The wind was whipping and back, and she decided that she better not let the kids stay. So she had them all bundled up. She only lived about a quarter of a mile away from the schoolhouse. That's what teachers did in that day. So this 19-year-old school teacher had some good twine among other school supplies, and she tied the children's arms together with the twine, and she led them outside and told them to keep in step and follow her. I believe that one of the pictures I'll show you later showed her holding one of the younger ones and carrying it, and the older boys were at the back. So as they held hands and were bound together by the twine, they started marching off to Minnie Freeman's house where she had been staying. It took them over an hour and a half to only go that long. Some of the children were tired. They started falling a little bit. The wind was whipping up 35, 45 miles per hour. It had dropped from 40, 45 degrees during the day down to 20. And at this point, it was down below zero. Their faces were being whipped by the wind and ice, and some of their eyeballs were starting to freeze, and their lips, and she just kept shouting and shouting, and I believe she carried the bell with them so that they could hear it no matter where. And they finally made it to her house. She bundled all the kids up inside, stoked the fires, got some extra blankets, and they were able to spend the night there. They kept ringing the bell off and on to let the parents who were close know that the kids were safe. Other school teachers around during this blizzard did the same thing. A few were able to stay in the schoolhouse with their children. The churches also rang the bell so that if anybody was lost, they could find their way. There are many sad stories about some of the children and their parents who tried to find their way. There's a story of one man whose two boys were coming home from their schools, and they followed the fence line, just holding onto the fence line coming back. Their father went out to look for them 1.5 miles, following the fence line going the other way, and they must have crisscrossed. He could not find them. The schoolhouse was empty, so he turned around and followed the fence line back, and they were home safe already, doing exactly what he had said, following the fence line. That was a positive story. Some others did not make it. They had maybe found some safety in a haystack, but their feet were frozen, and some of them lost their lives, and some of them lost fingers and maybe some toes, and it was terrible. Every story that we've heard about all of this blizzard, nicknamed now the school children's blizzard of 1888, is amazing. The survivors told their stories over and over as the years went on, and they actually formed a little club or group to continue those stories for the longest time. Minnie Freeman went on to become quite the famous heroine. She received over 80 proposals of marriage. You know, school teachers at the time were not allowed to be married. They were not allowed to, well, they weren't allowed to date or drink anything. I don't even know if they were allowed to drink coffee. But she received 80 proposals of marriage. One from Europe, from a prince who wanted a stout German woman to be his wife. And he offered her, and she was like, I don't think so, Prince. But she did marry a couple years later to the man that she had known for a long time, and they did have 2 children. She went on to become very active in civic responsibilities around town, and she is remembered now as the heroine of the children's blizzard of 1888. In the Capitol building in Lincoln, there is a mosaic that you can see in the rotunda. It's of Minnie Freeman with the children, all twined by their hands, and behind her. And here's a picture of Minnie Freeman, our heroine, someone from Nebraska worth remembering.